Toronto police have released new details about a series of attempted carjackings and shootings that have left one person seriously injured in Toronto's East End.
And as Black Friday looms, Canada Post begins to temporarily lay off striking workers. We'll tell you what both sides are saying tonight.
And the Trudeau Liberals' 2-month GST holiday bill, that's expected to pass in the House of Commons this evening. We'll take you to Ottawa.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. We begin with CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan at Toronto Police 51 Division, who's working on a story about a man who's been arrested and some of his alleged victims have been seriously injured. Steve.
Troy LeDrew, is his name, Lena, and yesterday during our 4 o'clock coverage, we broke the news the OPP had issued an arrest warrant for him, alleging that on the day before, in the morning, 5 a.m., he fired at 10 vehicles near the 401 and Dixie Road, striking 10 cars with bullets. The allegations were at that point that he stole a vehicle at that location and dumped it in North Etobicoke. And just after 4 o'clock, it was roughly 7:30 last night, according to the Toronto Police, that same individual went on another shooting spree. The allegations are that he was in the area of Dundas and River. He attempted to carjack several vehicles. He fired at 2 of them, striking one person, causing that person to be rushed to hospital where they remain in critical condition. The Toronto Police were able to catch up with him near Lakeshore and Carlaw. After a brief foot pursuit, they were able to apprehend him, and they did seize a firearm. So he is now facing very serious charges here in the city of Toronto, which include 2 counts of attempted murder, several robbery charges, firearms offenses charges, as well as a breach of probation and a failing to comply with a recognizance. I'll speak to what they mean on the other side of this clip, but here is remarks from the Toronto Police Association president who spoke with our Courtney Hales earlier today. Let's have a listen to what he said.
It is time and time again. We are so frustrated. Our members are so frustrated with what's going on at the federal level. We continue to lobby. I'll continue to talk about it at every opportunity I have. But when we see somebody out on bail for a violent offense, on probation for a violent offense, in possession of an illegal firearm with a huge magazine, that he's shooting somebody in the streets of Toronto. Thank God the other person wasn't hit. And our thoughts are with the person that's in the hospital. But again, hopefully he's not let out of custody, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was.
Once again, we were reporting on another alleged violent offender who is out on a bail, has been convicted of violent offenses. This is why he's been charged with failing to comply with his probation, because he would have been on conditions after a previous conviction to keep the peace, be of good behavior. He was also under a Section 100, which means that he was prohibited from owning any firearms. Clearly, the allegations are that he breached that, and he was charged with failing to comply with his recognizance because he was out on a bail for another offense and didn't comply with the conditions on that bail, and this is why he's in the position he's in now. And that's why you heard the frustration from Clayton Campbell, from the TPA Association. They are very frustrated at what his officers and many others around the GTA are seeing as they constantly arrest the same people over and over again. It's recidivism that the police are saying needs to come to an end. So back to you guys.
All right, Steve Ryan reporting for us this evening. Steve, thanks so much for this. And Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow was asked about the string of violent events at City Hall today.
I'm glad that he's finally caught. This kind of behavior is just horrific. Everyone should be able to be on the street safe when they're driving. And this man that are shooting at drivers and carjacking, and it's not just at one place. He was really in different locations. So I'm glad, and I want to appreciate the officers that finally caught him.
Well, Ontario Premier Doug Ford also commented on the suspect being out on bail.
That's ridiculous. These JPs and these judges, they have to start keeping people in jail. Who lets people out on bail after shooting up the streets? It's the most ridiculous thing. We need tough judges and tough JPs when it comes to crime. People are fed up with it.
Well, the OPP have yet to release information about charges in the shooting incidents on the 401.
And speaking of the 401, let's get a check on how the drive is going on major expressways in the city tonight. Adjoa and Siayabwa keeping a close eye on that.
Well, yeah, we are dealing with quite a few problems. Quite a few issues have popped in and come into the traffic desk as you do make your way out this hour. You're running into problems on the southbound lanes of the 400. This is the ramp that takes you to the westbound 401 collectors. It is the right lane and shoulder that is blocked following this collision. As well, if you're traveling and making your way on to the 401, MTL's reporting problems westbound 401 in the Express at Yonge. It might be just in the backlog, but reports of a collision that does have the right lane blocked. Problems I can see further west on the 401 in the Express through Kiel. Heads up for a collision. It's blocking that left lane. And if your travels do take you to the 410, it's getting busier as you make your way into Brampton from Steeles all the way up towards Sandalwood. A reminder, there's still no access on the southbound 404 on-ramp to westbound Aurora Road. It is closed following a long-standing stall truck. I'll send it back to you both.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
Well, Canada Post has started temporarily laying off some of its striking workers as the labor action by more than 55,000 employees approaches the 2-week mark.
Let's go live to CP24's Arda Zakarian. She's at Canada Post's South Central Processing Plant on Eastern Avenue for these latest developments. How is the union responding to these temporary layoffs, Arda?
They say that they think this is a scare tactic. Now, Canada Post says that they are allowed to do these layoffs under the Canada Labour Code because the collective agreement has expired. But they do say that these layoffs are temporary and that it's a limited number of people. Let's hear from the executive shop steward here at this facility out South Central.
I was very shocked and surprised because in the 38 years that I've been working for Canada Post and a Canadian Union of Postal Worker, member of Toronto Local, it's unprecedented. I've never heard this kind of talk because in our collective agreement, there's a no layoff clause. So it was a very big surprise for all of us.
Now, Canada Post says that their business has been significantly impacted because of this labor disruption, and not just during this time, but they say they've had losses in the billions and that Canada Post needs to revamp and modernize their mail delivery service. And they say this is all about the future of Canada Post. But both sides do say that they are ready to come together to come to an agreement. Back to you.
CP24's Arda Zakarian. Arda, thank you. An employment lawyer, Aaron Zaltzman, talked to us about the legalities of Canada Post laying off workers in the middle of a labor dispute.
It is a fairly unusual, perhaps even unprecedented move to be laying off workers in the middle of a strike. And it's whether or not they would be allowed to may in fact be an issue of some contention. The Canada Labour Code, the statute that governs the employment of the Canada Postal workers, actually specifically prevents employers from interfering with activities in a trade union, including strikes. It's sort of to prevent any kind of retaliation against employees who are trying to strike.
And the Canada Post strike is impacting the city's ability to deliver on-street parking permits. So drivers who've ordered a new parking permit but have yet to receive it may be temporarily exempt from paying any parking-related fines. The city says parking enforcement has granted a grace period until December 15th for existing permit holders who have prepaid or renewed online but not yet received their permits. In the meantime, existing permit holders, just continue displaying your expired permit from the current term.
509, 3 degrees out there tonight. You're watching Live at 5.
Religious and city leaders are meeting today at City Hall to discuss a rise of hate and anti-Semitism in Toronto. A diverse range of religious and civil leaders met at City Hall today to discuss a rise in hate in Toronto.
The Interfaith Summit focused on anti-Semitism, which accounts for well over half of the reported hate crimes in the city. Today's gathering was a show of solidarity with the city's Jewish community and focused on strategies to combat hate.
From October 7, 2023 to March 2024, hate crime in this city was up 93%. We are here today to remind ourselves that throughout Toronto's history, our great city welcomed the world. Those who fled world conflict zones, discrimination and hate, persecution and torture. We were a place where people looked as a place to start anew, a place of high purpose, a place where hundreds of cultures, religions, and nationalities could build neighborhoods together that make up our wonderful city.
And one man told the summit about being targeted along with his mother in a hate-motivated attack.
We were driving home, we were around College and Bathurst, and these two individuals decided to jump on top of the truck while we were in traffic at a red light in broad daylight because I had an Israeli flag hanging out of the back window. I got out of the truck to try and just keep them back and protect my property and my mother, who was on the passenger side. I was met immediately with a man that threw a shot at me, and then my mom had gotten out, and the female that was there started assaulting her and started physically harming her. My mom suffered a broken nose and a concussion. I had scratches all over my body and a cut above my eye.
Anti-Semitism has been the most reported hate crime in Toronto for more than 5 consecutive years.
Well, the TTC's interim CEO is calling for more help from police to address a rise in hate-motivated graffiti on the transit system.
In a letter to Toronto's police chief, Greg Percy says there's been an increase in hateful graffiti on TTC vehicles and infrastructure targeting the Jewish community. He said the added workload of removing it is diverting crews from scheduled maintenance. And Percy's seeking guidance on effective deterrence or available supports to mitigate hate graffiti. Toronto police say they investigate every hate crime report they receive, including 106 reports of hate-motivated and geopolitical graffiti at TTC facilities since 2023.
Well, Markham's mayor is refusing to lower development charges, saying it will not fix the housing crisis.
Vaughan recently slashed its development charges back to 2018 levels and moved to spur home development. Yet Markham Mayor Frank Scarpitti says those changes are crucial to paying for sewage, water, roads, parks, and fire stations needed when building new communities. Scarpitti notes if Markham went back to 2018 development charges, it would lead to a revenue loss of nearly $92 million a year and result in having to increase property taxes by 50%. So he's calling on government and the building industry to find alternative ways to deliver complete communities.
5:14, 3 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And the Liberals' proposed 2-month GST break, it is expected to pass in the House of Commons today. Stay with us. Well, the Liberals proposed a 2-month GST break. It is expected to pass in the House of Commons today.
CP24's Lindsay Biscaya joins us from our newsroom with the latest developments. Lindsay, the Conservatives say they're going to be voting against it.
Yeah, so that's kind of the debate that's happening right now still in the House of Commons, Lena and Bakari, is because there is some opposition to this legislation, mostly, as you mentioned, from the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois, who say that this is just not the right way to do this. They say this bill is rushed and that it will benefit wealthier Canadians. We know the NDP is going to back this legislation because the NDP claims it was actually the party that came up with it. But yes, as you mentioned, the Conservatives opposing this. And the conversation right now really seems to be stuck on the fact that in 2021, this was something Aaron O'Toole, when he was leader of the Conservative Party, pitched something incredibly similar. It was a break in taxes for the month of December. So it wasn't as long, but it was quite similar. And so that discussion right now from the Liberals really is why won't the Conservatives support this legislation if they wanted to push something through that was similar back in 2021. So again, the vote has not happened yet, but we are hearing from all the different parties in the opposition about why they don't agree with this legislation. And we did hear from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre earlier today on that. Here's what he had to say.
He's desperate. He's lost control, but he's trying to hold on to power. And so he's come up with a irresponsible and inflationist $6 billion tax trick that he will take away right before raising the carbon tax on heat, housing, groceries, and gas in just a few months.
So at the same time, on the provincial level, we know now as well that the Ontario government is expected to match that tax break. This comes after the Premier was saying just a few days ago that he didn't agree with this, but now they seem to have switched their tune and they are saying that they're going to match this. And we did hear from Ontario's Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy about that today. Here's what he had to say.
We're sticking to the fiscal plan. We have a path to balance. We're not going to waver from that, but we're not going to waver from helping people out at a time that they really need help. There many people are struggling. Cut to the tax. You know, we like cuts to the taxes, but we're going to stick to the fiscal plan.
But Minister, where's the...
So a lot to go over, Lena and Bakari, and of course that discussion still happening in the House of Commons. There is expected to be a vote on this later today. It was supposed to be later this afternoon, but it seems to be going into the evening right now, so we will keep you updated on what happens there. Back to you.
And again, that bill expected to pass in the House of Commons tonight. Lindsay Biscaya keeping a close eye on that situation. Thanks, Lindsay.
Well, Air Canada is said to become the first Canadian airline to roll out facial recognition technology at the gate.
Yeah, this could be controversial. Starting on Tuesday, customers who board most domestic flights at Vancouver International Airport will be able to walk onto the plane without presenting any physical pieces of identification, not even their passport. Those taking part in the voluntary program will be able to upload a photo of their face and scan of their passport to the airline's app. The technology is already deployed by a number of U.S. airlines, overseas airports, and government security agencies.
Well, TikTok is rolling out changes that'll affect the teenagers who use it.
Yeah, in the coming weeks, the company will begin restricting the use of some appearance effects for users under the age of 18. It comes after concerns were raised by teens and parents in a new study. The restrictions will apply to some effects that alter someone's appearance, but may be hard to detect, like beauty filters. However, this will not apply to obvious or funny effects like animal ears.
And a social media ban for children under 16, that'll soon become law in Australia. That will be the first country in the world with such a restriction.
Yeah, this is making headlines too. The law passed by Parliament covers platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. They'll be liable for fines of up to $50 million for systemic failures to prevent children younger than 16 from holding accounts. The platforms will have 1 year to work out how they can implement the ban before penalties are enforced. Tech analyst Carmit Levy thinks education is a better route to protect young people online.
We have to teach our kids digital skills so that they can understand, identify when threats show up on their device, on their screen, know where the resources are, know to involve mom and dad, not to drive underground, understand, the best practices to stay away from risk, lower their risk profile.
Child welfare and mental health advocates in Australia, they're concerned about unintended consequences of the ban. So I'm saying that it could dangerously isolate many children who use social media to find support.
You're watching Toronto's Breaking News CP24. This is Live at 5.
And coming up, Canada's men's national soccer team has moved up to its highest ever ranking. The Feed Scarborough Food Bank says that it is embracing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah, founder Suman Roy tells CP24 simply providing people with food isn't enough.
In Feed Scarborough Food Security Initiative, we took it in our hands to have wraparound services in a way that actually build resiliency within our community so they don't need to rely on operations like food banks. So that is kind of what we are focusing on, like career development, like business incubation, to name a few, especially with newcomers coming into this country. And especially in Scarborough, we know a lot of them land up. Yeah. And to help them actually to find employment, get their education certified, get their experiences certified, and get them into employment is kind of what our goals are.
Roy was on Parliament Hill yesterday to meet with politicians. He says most understood the issues affecting poverty and also says that policies that address employment and income security are key to fighting hunger.
Well, the Toronto Scepters flag has been raised at City Hall.
The city's PWHL team is entering its second season. The Scepters will play all of their games this season at Coca-Cola Coliseum. The home opener, it's going to be Saturday afternoon against Boston.
And Canada's men's national soccer team has moved up to its highest ever ranking. Canada jumped 4 spots to 31st in the world to end the year, beating the previous high of 35 in February of 2022. Canada's won 3 matches in a row and plays Mexico next in the semifinal of the CONCACAF Nations League at the end of March.
Well, the rain didn't dampen the holiday spirit as the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade delights the crowd in New York City.
The annual tradition started a century ago in 1924. Good to see it's still going. It features floats and marching bands, clowns, as well as the famous massive balloons. Take a look at these pictures. This year's lineup featured Minnie Mouse, Minions, Ronald McDonald, and much more. And some big names performed in the parade, including Jennifer Hudson and Idina Menzel, and the WNBA champion New York Liberty are riding on a float. And of course, the grand finale will see Santa riding through the streets of Manhattan to formally usher in the holiday season. Looks great.
It's 5:26, 3 degrees, feeling more like -2 outside. This is Live at 5.
Toronto police have released new details about a series of attempted carjackings and shootings that left one person seriously injured in Toronto's East End. More on that coming up.
Toronto police have released new details about a series of attempted carjackings and shootings that left one person seriously injured in Toronto's East End.
As Black Friday looms, Canada Post begins to temporarily lay off striking workers. We'll tell you what both sides are saying tonight.
And the Trudeau Liberals' 2-month GST holiday bill is expected to pass in the House of Commons this evening. We're going to take you to Ottawa.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Lena Latafat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. A man is facing multiple charges in a 2-day crime spree in Toronto and Mississauga.
29-year-old Troy Ledrew is facing a number of charges, including 2 counts of attempted murder. Ledrew, who was out on bail at the time of his arrest last night, made his first court appearance today.
Right now, let's go live to CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan, who's at Toronto Police 51 Division for the latest. Steve.
Yeah, Bakari, Alina, it was midday yesterday when we received information that the OPP had issued an arrest warrant for Ledrew, charging him with some very serious criminal offenses as a result of the incident that they allege he took place in on Tuesday morning near the 401 and Dixie Road. The allegations are that he fired a gun at least 10 vehicles, striking those 10 vehicles with bullets. He stole a car and dumped that car in North Etobicoke. The OPP issued an arrest warrant yesterday afternoon, and according to the Toronto Police, just hours later, at around 7:30 p.m., Ledrew was on Dundas Street near River Street, and the Toronto Police alleged that he had a gun and that he attempted to carjack several vehicles. He fired at 2 of them and striking one person, and that person remains in hospital in life-threatening condition. The Toronto Police were able to catch up to him near Lakeshore and Carlisle last night. A brief foot pursuit ensued, and the Toronto Police were able to apprehend him, and they did recover a gun. So he is now facing more serious charges, including 2 counts of attempted murder, robbery charges, and firearms charges as well. And as you guys had been reporting, and we're showing you his photo right now, he was out on bail, so he has been charged with breaching that recognizance, and he's been charged with breaching his probation as well, suggesting that he was convicted of a criminal offense, and part of his release upon sentencing was that he keep the peace and be of good behavior and not possess firearms. According to the Toronto Police Association, he was on a Section 100, which means that he could not have any firearms, and the allegations again are that he had a firearm with him yesterday when the Toronto Police arrested him. Here's more from Clayton Campbell. He's the Toronto Police Association president. He spoke with our Courtney Hills earlier on today, and you can hear the frustration. It's palpable in his voice. Let's listen.
He has a history of violence. He's currently on bail and probation. Not surprisingly, also has a firearm prohibition. So it's one of these things, again, where our members are so frustrated where we see people involved in violent offenses released from custody time and time again. And one of our officers actually was the victim of the incident on the 401 2 days ago. And he's reached out to me and taken the unprecedented step to say, let the public know even a highly decorated senior police officer can be a victim of a shooting. His car was hit with a round. Thank God he's okay.
Law enforcement officials have been telling me for the last, I would say, couple of years throughout the GTA that they need to have a better enforcement when it comes to bail. Repeat offenders need to remain in custody, and those convicted of violent crimes need to be sentenced to sentences that will not only punish those who commit those offenses, but it also acts as a deterrent for others who may consider committing the same crimes. That hasn't been done yet, and this is why you're hearing the frustration among many police officials who we speak with.
Okay,
Send it back to you guys.
CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan continuing our coverage of the story. Thanks a lot.
Well, Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow was asked whether she's concerned that the suspect was out on bail at the time of the incidents.
I don't know the details of whether this person has what kind of history and where he obtained a gun. Does he have mental health problems? How could it be that he is out there just shooting at drivers? That it's just not acceptable behavior. I'm very glad that he was.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford also commented on the suspect being out on bail.
That's ridiculous. These JPs and these judges, they have to start keeping people in jail. Who lets people out on bail after shooting up the streets? It's the most ridiculous thing. We need tough judges and tough JPs when it comes to crime. People are fed up with it.
Release information about charges in the shooting incidents on the 401.
Right now it's 5:33, 3 degrees, feeling more like 1 below zero outside. Let's check on the commute with CP24's traffic specialist. Is the commute going to keep people warm?
Ooh, if you have heat in your car, it is. If you don't, well, it's going to be a little bit of a situation, Bakari. But we are dealing with quite a few problems which are impacting the afternoon drive. Because if you're stuck here on the westbound lanes of the 401 behind this collision, it's westbound 401 and the Express at Kiel. We do have that left lane occupied. A lot of vehicles involved in this one. Emergency crews, tows on scene, everybody on scene trying to get these vehicles off the highway in the meantime. Here's what it's doing to the drive, both core and collectors. Traffic is not moving from as far back as Warden. Then on the eastbound 401, at least no problem. Starting to thin out now. Busy in sections from Dixie out to Kennedy opens up, and you'll find it busier again as you make your way in towards Durham. And you know what? A little bit of good news. We had some problems on the southbound 400 ramp to the westbound 401 collectors. Was a collision. It did have the right lane blocked. The problems there did all clear. I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but problems are still continuing in Aurora. The southbound 404 on ramp to westbound from westbound Aurora Road is still closed. That is following an ongoing stall truck. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, Adjoa, thanks so much. Good to know. Well, Canada Post has started temporarily laying off some of its striking workers as the labor action by more than 55,000 employees approaches the 2-week mark.
Okay, let's go live to CP24's Artis Zakarian at Canada Post's South Central Processing Plant. This is on Eastern Avenue for the latest developments. Arda, what are you hearing?
Bakari and Lena, there's a lot of frustration here for the picketers that are standing outside this processing plant. But what we know from Canada Post is that they say that they are allowed to make these layoffs under the Canada Labour Code. That's because the collective agreement has expired. Now, they say these layoffs are temporary and it's a limited number of people. Here's more from the executive shop steward here at this location on how they're feeling.
I was very shocked and surprised because in the 38 years that I've been working for Canada Post and a Canadian Union of Postal Worker, member of Toronto local, it's unprecedented. I've never heard this kind of talk because in our collective agreement, there's a no layoff clause. So it was a very big surprise for all of us.
Canada Post says their business has been significantly impacted by this labor disruption, and they've had to make adjustments to their operations. They also said that they've had financial losses of up to $1 billion, not just because of this labor disruption, but throughout the last little bit of time. And they need to revamp the mail service. They need to say it needs to be modernized. And this is about the future of Canada's mail service. Both sides say they are ready to negotiate and they want to come to an agreement. Back to you.
Erin reporting live on the Canada Post strike tonight. Arda, thanks so much. And staying with the story, employment lawyer Aaron Zaltzman spoke to us about possible pushback from the union in response to these layoffs.
They could file a unfair labor complaint with the Canada Industrial Labor Relations, the Canadian Industry Relations Board. There could also be a grievance that is put in place. It would come down to whether or not the union is able to show that Canada Post's actions are meant to interfere with the strike rather than simply a reflection of actual changing labor conditions.
And the Canada Post strike is impacting the city's ability to deliver on-street parking permits. So drivers who've ordered new parking permits but haven't received them yet, you may be temporarily exempt from paying any parking-related fines. So the city says parking enforcement has granted a grace period until December 15th for existing permit holders who prepaid or renewed online but haven't yet received their permits. Again, that's the key, if you prepaid or renewed already. In the meantime, existing permit holders continue displaying the expired permit from the current term.
5:37, 3 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
The Liberals' proposed 2-month GST break. It's expected to pass in the House of Commons this evening.
Welcome back. The Liberals' proposed 2-month GST break is expected to pass in the House of Commons today. That vote was expected to take place this afternoon. Now we're learning it'll take place later tonight.
CP24's Lindsay Biscaya joins us live from the newsroom with the latest developments. Lindsay.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Lena and Bakari. We're not expected to hear this vote until later tonight because debate in the House of Commons is very much ongoing, as this is once again another divided issue. The Liberals brought this forward. The NDP did say it was going to back it because the NDP claims that it actually came up with the idea in the first place. But we know the Bloc Québécois and the Conservatives are going to oppose this for varying different reasons per party. But really what this means is that this would be a 2-month break on the goods and services tax. So that means a dozen of items, groceries, alcohol, beverages, and children's clothing as well. That will be tax-free for December and right into February. And the Liberals are really painting this as something that will help Canadians save money into the holidays and then afterwards when you're usually a little bit tight on money after the holidays. But again, the Conservatives, they have said from the beginning they are going to vote against this legislation. And we did hear from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre earlier today on why. Have a listen.
Now is the worst possible time to be blowing $6 billion trying to save Justin Trudeau's political skin, especially with the threats coming from the United States, with our border in chaos, our economy collapsing, and everything broken. We need real, responsible leadership from a strong, smart Prime Minister who has the brains and backbone to put Canada first.
And we know also at this point that the Ontario government is actually going to look at matching this legislation if it is voted in today. And we heard from Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy in terms of what that could look like for Ontarians. Have a listen.
We're having ongoing discussions about the priorities for Ontario, and so those are active discussions. We focus very much aligning with the federal government now to provide relief and a cut. And we wanted to make it clean because there's a lot of administrative issues to deal with, so we didn't want businesses to have a lot of, certainly of course at the federal government that will have to deal with the mechanics of the HST. We wanted to provide quick, certain fiscal.
So a lot to watch for, Lena and Bakari, on both the provincial front and the federal front. But in the House of Commons, we know the debates are ongoing into this evening and that vote expected later tonight. Back to you.
All right, Lindsay Biscaya live in our newsroom tonight. Lindsay, thank you. Well, a diverse range of religious and civil leaders met at City Hall today to discuss a rise in hate in Toronto.
The Interfaith Summit focused on anti-Semitism, which accounts for well over half of the reported hate crimes in the city. Today's gathering was a show of solidarity with the city's Jewish community and focused on strategies to combat hate.
The problem is we have outdated, useless laws in this country, in this province, that do nothing to give police the tools they do to basically stop these organized attempts of fostering hate and attacks on Toronto citizens. We need new, reasonable, practical laws from the federal and provincial government to give the police the tools to stop this systematic hate and attack on people because of their religion, in this case here, especially because they happen to be Jewish.
And one man told the summit about being targeted along with his mother in a hate-motivated attack and accused the mayor for not doing enough to address it.
In regards to her, didn't exactly like to hear all of the answers that she was given. She had said she kind of seemed to be passing the blame off to police. When I was an ex-fireman in EMT, I know how the chain of command works, and that's something that comes from the top and it trickles all the way down. So whether it's a provincial issue that has to get escalated so that she could get the power to instruct her police on what they need to do, then that's a path that she has to take. And unfortunately, she just started naming people on the board that we should be talking to and not be talking to her.
Well, after the meeting, Mayor Chow said that it's up to all Torontonians to speak out against hate.
I think each one of us, every Torontonians, need to stand up against hate. When they see graffiti, when they see anti-Semitism, when they see unacceptable behavior, report it, say no to it. So it's not just me as a mayor. I pledged today, I signed, I said, yes, we will take all the action we can. But I don't think it's just myself. I think collectively the citizens of Toronto, I know, will say no to hate because we are a city of people that are diverse. We are a city of people that are compassionate and caring.
Anti-Semitism has been the most reported hate crime in Toronto for more than 5 consecutive years.
And the TTC's interim CEO is calling for more help from police to address a rise in hate-motivated graffiti on the transit system.
In a letter to Toronto's police chief, Greg Percy says there's been an increase in hateful graffiti on TTC vehicles and infrastructure targeting the Jewish community. He said the added workload of removing it is diverting crews from scheduled maintenance. Percy is seeking guidance on effective deterrence or available supports to mitigate hate graffiti. Toronto police say they investigate every hate crime report they receive, including 106 reports of hate-motivated and geopolitical graffiti at TTC facilities since 2023.
Well, Markham's mayor is refusing to lower development charges, saying that it's not going to fix the housing crisis.
Vaughan recently slashed its development charges back to 2018 levels in a move to spur home building. Yet, Markham's mayor, Frank Scarpitti, says those charges are crucial to paying for the sewage, water, roads, parks, and fire stations needed when building new communities. Scarpitti notes if Markham went back to 2018 development charges, that would lead to a revenue loss of nearly $92 million a year and result in having to increase property taxes by 50%. He's calling on the government and the building industry to find alternative ways to deliver complete communities.
And Ontario Health Minister Sylvia Jones announced an expansion of practice for midwives.
This scope expansion will also improve the end-of-life experience after the death of a loved one. By allowing nurse practitioners to certify death in more circumstances and allowing registered nurses to certify a death when the death is expected, ensuring certification is completed faster while preserving dignity for families.
As of July 1st, nurse practitioners will be able to order and use defibrillators and pacemakers and treat certain skin tumors or lesions.
It's 5:47, 3 degrees, but feeling more like -1 outside. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, Australia is becoming the first country in the world to ban social media for children under 16. How would it work and what are the challenges? We'll talk about that next.
Well, social media ban for children under 16 it'll soon become law in Australia. That'll be the first country in the world with such a restriction.
Yeah, the law passed by Parliament covers platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. They could face fines of up to $50 million for systemic failures to prevent children younger than 16 from holding accounts. The platforms will have 1 year to work out how they can implement the ban before penalties are enforced.
Well, Air Canada is set to become the first Canadian airline to roll out facial recognition technology at the gate.
Yeah, so starting on Tuesday, customers who board most domestic flights at Vancouver International Airport, they'll be able to walk out onto the plane without presenting any physical pieces of identification. Those taking part in the voluntary program will be able to upload a photo of their face and scan of their passport to the airline's app. The technology is already deployed by a number of U.S. airlines, overseas airports, and government security agencies.
For a closer look at both of these stories, we're joined live by tech analyst Carmi Levy. Carmi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. So let's talk about this technology at the airport. Lena and I were chatting about it. She hasn't used it yet, but I've had a chance to use it not only for going through customs, but also boarding. It's neat. You don't have to show anything. You just stand there, take your picture, don't smile, and then get on the plane.
Yeah, it's like science fiction come to life, and it's so much more convenient. We all know what it's like walking through the airport. You're juggling a million different things. You don't have enough hands to carry everything. The last thing you want to be doing when you get up to the gate is kind of fishing out your passport or your phone, and then on the phone trying to unlock it and look for what you need for your boarding pass. So just to be able to authenticate using your face is an incredible convenience, and it streamlines the process. It means that lines move more quickly. We don't wait as long. We get onto the plane much more easily. We move through the airport much more easily. So as a convenience play, it makes sense. We've seen the benefits in the U.S. As you said, American Airlines have been using this technology, airports, for a number of years. And so Canada's just getting on the bandwagon. It's 2024. We use facial recognition for these things. It makes flying better. Who could argue with that?
Fair enough. Some people, though, will tell you they have concerns about privacy and ethics here, Carmi. What do you see as challenges here?
Yeah, because whenever I use facial recognition, that's my face that has essentially become my physical signature. And so they have my imagery on file as well as all my other identifying data. And the problem here is that if that information is compromised, that's pretty significant. I can change my password. I can't change my face. And so, the company has said, it is incredibly secure. They've used the latest and greatest security protocols. They said that they don't share this information with the government or with anyone else. It stays within the airline, that is opt-in only. It's voluntary. So if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to. You can still use the old way. So they've addressed all of these things. What I'm still not hearing is, where does this information go? Air Canada says they don't share it with the government, but we know companies like Air Canada and others often share our personal information with their partners. So a little more transparency on what's happening at the back end, how long this information is stored for, how it's stored, where it's stored, things like that. That would help allay some of those fears. And I guess as they expand to other airports in Canada, because that's the plan, they can continue to communicate those additional talking points. But for now, good start. Still have questions. Hopefully Air Canada can answer them in the near future.
Okay, good. So people can opt out if they want. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch gears here. Social media ban for those under 16 years old. What are your thoughts on this? How will this work? And also, I was just reading an article from the BBC today that like 15% of these teens, they get fake ages on social media to get around it.
I think only 15. I think the rest of them are lying. Well. So, I mean, speaking as a parent as well as a technologist, I mean, I've seen the data, and the evidence continues to pile up. Social media is bad for our kids. It harms their mental health. It exposes them to toxic, predatory behaviors. We know this. And so the fact that any government is doing anything, we should applaud them. This needs to be a priority, not just in Australia, but here in Canada as well. So good on the Australians for trying something. That having been said, I'm not really a fan of bans as effective tools to accomplish this, because, as you said, 15% of kids easily work around that. If my kids were in Australia, they'd be among that 15%. So kids are savvy. They will always work around mom and dad. The best way to have a kid do something is to tell them not to do it. And so that's what a ban does. It also means that they can't learn proper best practices on how to use these technologies, how to be safe gradually as they grow. It's nothing. And then at the age of 16, bang, they get into it. And so that will open up a whole other hornet's nest of issues. We need to be a little more, let's call it subtle. We need to be more participatory and partnership-based. And quite frankly, it needs to be a conversation that parents have with their kids, with their communities, with their educators and specialists from an early age. A ban doesn't do it. Good start. Good that we're talking about it, but really we need to be doing more. And if this is what we think is going to solve it, we might be sadly disappointed.
Yeah, these kids are smart, and they certainly know their way around a phone. Tech analyst Carmi Levy, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, guys.
It's 5:56, 3 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, the Toronto Scepter's flag has been raised at City Hall ahead of their home opener. We'll tell you more coming up. Welcome back. The Toronto Scepter's flag has officially been raised at City Hall.
The city's PWHL team is entering its second season. The Scepters will play all of their games this season at Coca-Cola Coliseum. The home opener is Saturday afternoon against Boston.
And Canada's men's national soccer team has moved up its highest ever ranking. We're showing you pictures of that again. Canada jumped 4 spots to 31st in the world to end the year, beating the previous high of 35 in February of 2022.
It's 5:59, 3 degrees, feeling more like -1 outside. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24.